I never saw it, but in 1975, I was newly married, about 21 years old, and had a small baby. My sister, who was a teenager, was visiting us. My husband, my sister, and I had all gone to our bedrooms to settle down and go to sleep. I could say it was around 11 or 12 at night. We were just starting to relax and get sleepy when out of nowhere there was this horrible loud howl. I mean, it was so loud it made my chest vibrate and my ears hurt. The sound was not human but had a guttural human-like sound mixed with what sounded like a wolf. We were living in a mobile home at the time and it held just outside of our back door in the hallway near our bedroom. We jumped out of bed, looked at each other, and both said at the same time, "What the hell was that?" My husband was 10 years older than I was and an avid hunter. He wasn't the kind of guy to scare easily. His face drained of color. My sister came running down the hallway, white as a ghost, and said, "What was that?" I told her I didn't know. My husband said he was getting his rifle and grabbed it out of the closet. He opened up the back door and yelled out into the wind, "You better get the F out of here, or I'll blow your head off." He listened a moment before I yelled at him to please shut the door. He did, and we never heard any more after that. Needless to say, we stayed up all night, afraid to go to sleep. I have never forgotten that howl. There is no way it was a dog or coyotes. I've heard both of them howl. It wasn't a guy joking around either. It was so loud there is no way a human could have made that sound. I encountered a bipedal wolf-like creature here in western Michigan and it's got me spooked. I was out shoveling snow as is common here in my state. My encounter happened in a place just south of Rothbury, Michigan. I decided to take a walk in my family's woods one day, and that's when my life changed forever. My family owns 270 acres of land here in the city and town of Montague, Michigan. I ventured out into those woods as I've done many times, hundreds of times. The walk started as anyone would. I started to follow the creek south to check for deer stands on our property. The walk went as planned until I got about 300 yards south of the house. I stopped to have a cigarette. My eyes started to wander as I scoped for deer or coyote. As I gazed back and forth, I noticed this figure and froze. I literally froze. This thing made eye contact with me and then stood up. It was hairy, had very broad shoulders, and amber-colored eyes. It let out a growl unlike anything else I've heard. This wolf, as I call it, made 2 leaps and was gone. The most surprising thing about this encounter is how silent the woods were up to when I had my encounter. My encounter happened in February 2009. In November 2008, I broke my arm and was basically stranded at home. I was unable to drive or work and I was going stark raving mad with boredom. My best friend would drive the 35 miles north from Muskegon to pick me up in Shelby, just to take me back to Muskegon for a visit at her home. She'd take me out to dinner or out to see a movie, only to deliver me home to Shelby after whichever activity. It was truly a selfless act of love. One night she was driving me home. It was very late, well after 11 p.m. We were on the US 31 northbound, around the Rothbury area of Oceana County on the expressway. Being February in Michigan, the roads were naturally snowy, with scattered patches of ice and bare pavement. There was a small pickup truck in front of us, about 5 car lengths ahead of her car, when all of a sudden, we saw something on 2 legs dart out from the left, just in front of an overpass. It ran across the 2-lane highway and hit the back of the small pickup in the rear quarter panel, causing the pickup to fishtail. Luckily, the driver of the small pickup regained control, but they didn't stop to see what collided with their truck. If anything, it seemed to pick up speed and get the heck out of there. My friend and I watched in utter astonishment as the creature finished running to the right and disappeared into the weeds and trees along the highway. It didn't even break stride after it hit the truck. We looked at one another and sat in silence for a moment. And then I said, Did you see? She said, "Yeah, I saw it." We finished the ride to my house in silence, both of us lost in our thoughts. It looked like a giant dog or wolf. It was on its hind legs, not all fours, and it was at least 7 feet tall. It had pointed ears, a kind of mane around its neck, much like a lion's mane. It was dark in color, and its hind legs looked much like a dog's, which was even more pronounced, as it was running on only its hind legs. Its front legs were freely swinging as it ran, and it seemed to have its mouth slightly opened. It had an elongated face, very much like a collie face, and a long nose protruding from its face. Its face was covered by longish hair. The entire creature seemed to be covered in long hair, but I can't recall if it had a tail. Something tells me it did, but I can't recall for certain, so I don't want to say that it did, when in fact I'm not sure. We thought perhaps it might have been one of the Michigan Dogmen that are said to be in our area. Being a former Native American area, we have heard the stories, but never met anyone that had a first-hand encounter. There was always someone who knew someone who knew someone who knew something. But now, my best friend and I definitely saw it. We had a first-hand experience. Our encounter was brief and over in a matter of mere moments, but it was a front and center in front of us, and we saw it clear as hell. Thanks for sticking around while I'm trying to build the channel and mess around in the editor to find all the right settings and such. And, of course, improving the editing. So, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe, and I'll have the email down in the description below where you can send me your personal stories. Now, thank you and have a great night.